Hey, everybody. Welcome to day 3 of the 5-day layoff bounce back challenge. And thank you for joining us live this morning, too. Today, we're going to be focusing on everyone's favorite topic, resumes. Okay, maybe resumes aren't that exciting, but they're critical to your success in your job search because your resume is what determines if you get the interview or not. And regardless of your skills or qualifications, there's a pretty good chance that you're making a few common mistakes that end up pushing your resume into a black hole. So today we're going to explain what those mistakes are and how to avoid them so that you can make sure that you're building a resume that lands you interviews. And if you're joining us live right now, let us know you're here by saying hello in the comments and let us know where you're watching from too. And while you're doing that, I'll take a moment to introduce myself. I'm Doug Howard, and I'm an engineering manager, mentor, and career coach. And I don't believe any engineer should be limited by non-engineering skills like interviewing, networking, relationship building, or people skills. But in my previous life as an engineering manager, I discovered that these were the areas that a lot of engineers struggle with. And in most cases, it's what's holding you back in your career. But all of these skills are teachable, and I know how to teach them. So to make a bigger impact on more people's lives, I ditched the corporate world to pivot my career towards helping engineers grow in these areas. As for Stacia, I'll let Stacia introduce herself when she joins us in a little bit. Unfortunately, Stacia is running a little late right now. There's some really bad fog hazards in her area, and because of it, her daughter's school didn't open up until 10 a.m. this morning, right now. But I checked in with her a few minutes ago, right before I went live, and she should be joining us soon. But for now, I'm going to keep this moving. But before I continue, I'm going to check my sound settings because I feel like my microphone or something is not working right. So give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. If this is your first time joining us live this week, then you're going to want to download the free workbook that we created because it outlines all the exercises that we'll be going through today. To download the workbook, just click on the link that I included in the post for this live stream. And if you're having trouble finding the link, then let me know in the comments. I'm going to keep an eye on the comments here back and forth, but there is a 10-second delay between when I'm talking and when you're seeing it. So just know that I'm seeing your comments. I'll be checking in on them throughout this live stream, but there is a lag. Okay, we're going to cover a lot of ground today. So if you have any questions throughout today's live stream, be sure to let me know in the comments. Like I said before, we'll make sure we get everyone's questions answered. Now, I want to start by sharing a story from back in my days as an engineering manager. At my old company, we had this situation where we were creating a new position. It was kind of like a hybrid position of sales, technical sales, and engineering. It was kind of like a person that needed to know sales tactics and deep engineering so that they could go out in the field and solve customers' problems on the fly, just to give faster solutions to our customers. So this was a newly created position, and the position actually didn't report to me. It wasn't going to, but because it overlapped with engineering, the other department manager, which was the head of sales, they wanted my help with kind of helping define the role and what type of characteristics should we be looking for in this candidate. And so we created the job description, and I happen to know a person who would be the perfect candidate for this job. It was someone I knew, that didn't work there. And I brought up this person to the hiring manager, and they were super interested. So the job description, was created, but the job wasn't even posted online yet. There was no opening yet. This is still like in the behind the scenes stage at the company where, we're just kind of like planning to post this job online. And the point I'm going at here is, so I created an inroad for my contact. We'll call him Jim, just to have a name here for this. And we'll call the we'll call the sales manager Mike. So anyway, I connected Jim and Mike together before there was even a job opening technically, posted online. And they had a chat, they had kind of an informal chat at lunch to talk about the role. He shared his background and whatnot, and everything was copacetic. Everything was seeming like a good fit. Mike, the sales manager, was really high on this person. And, it sounded like the interviewing process was just going to be kind of a formality from there. Everyone was on board with this. So what we did was, it took a few weeks for us to actually, I shouldn't say us, but, our company collectively working with HR, it took us a few weeks to get the actual, everything moves slow in corporate. It took us a few weeks to get the job actually posted online so that people could apply. But once we did get the job posted, we gave my friend Jim, we gave him an inside track. I told him the day it was posted, hey, it's online. You can go. Here's the link. Submit your application right away. Get a head start before a bunch of other people start applying. And so he did. And so we knew he submitted his application. So the sales manager Mike and I, we're basically waiting to receive that email from HR, letting us know that he applied. But after a few days, it never came, which isn't that uncommon. Things move pretty slow in corporate. If someone's on vacation, things like this could get stuck in an inbox for a week. But after we went a week, of not hearing anything and not seeing the application come through, we started to get a little worried, what's going on? So I reached out to Jim to ask, just to make sure, hey, we haven't seen your resume come through yet. Did you actually submit it? He looked through his emails. He got a confirmation email from our company saying, your application has been submitted. Then, he went ahead just in case and resubmitted it just to, maybe it got lost in some type of filter. So all this time, he did submit the resume, yet it never reached the hiring manager. So then what we did was Mike and I, we reached out to HR, to ask, hey, we were expecting a specific person to submit an application, and they said they did, and we haven't seen it come through. And the HR manager didn't know what was going on. They couldn't find their resume anywhere in the system. So this created a lot of confusion and frustration. We're talking with Jim, a few weeks ago about how we want to give him an inside track on this job, how he's the perfect candidate, how, it's just a very perfect fit all around. And then all of a sudden, everyone's so excited. And then all of a sudden he never hears back from us. There's no interview. So, it created kind of a nasty taste in Jim's mouth. It definitely, wasn't creating a good feeling for us at the company either. But luckily, because Jim was a connection of mine and we were able to, talk offline and whatnot, we were able to figure it out, and we were able to catch this. But, I want to point out, a few things with this story. There's a reason why I'm sharing this. This person, Jim, was the perfect candidate for this job. The perfect candidate rarely exists. But we had one, and we were pretty much considering giving him the job, but it was just a formality to go through the interviewing process. Just, we got to follow the rules and whatnot. So, they applied, they did all the right things, and the resume never even reached the hiring manager, and it got lost somewhere in the HR system. So the things I want to point out from this story is, first, you could have all the right skills on your resume, and your resume still might not reach the hiring manager. This emphasizes, the importance of networking. This emphasizes the importance of building relationships. This emphasizes the importance of, having ways to reach out to the company after you submit a resume, because this is, things like this happen all the time. This is not that uncommon. It might sound like a fluke, but things like this happen all the time. There's tons of mix-ups, especially in big companies. There's a lot of hoops to jump through and a lot of chain of commands to go through. And if the wrong person, has their spam filter setting not working right, all of a sudden your resume just gets lost. And with this particular story, I'm going to tell you more insights about like how the resume got stuck later, but it turned out to be something really simple and stupid that had nothing to do with his skills or experience, but it was just something that, he would never think to consider when he was submitting his resume, but it got flagged in the company's system. So it never went further. It never actually was seen by a person. And a lot of companies do hiring this way. So, it's important to, have always be expanding your network and building relationships and having connections so that, you have an inroad when there's opportunities like this. But if you don't have, connections with the company you're applying to, there's also ways to do that. And, there's ways to organically, reach out to confirm that they received your resume and things like that. And actually, that's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow, networking and things like that. But today we're going to focus on resumes. And, I just can't stress this enough. This person was 100% qualified for the job, and yet they wouldn't have even got the job just because the resume didn't reach the hiring manager. Still, when I think back to this story, it's just crazy to me. But like I said, we're going to be focusing on resumes today. And, like I said earlier, you can't get a job offer without getting an interview, which makes resumes critical to your job because resumes are what get you the interview. Without the resume, you don't get the interview. Now, writing strong resumes might seem simple and straightforward, but it's actually more complicated than you think. In fact, like my friend Jim, you could have all the right skills, background, and experience included in your resume and still get rejected. And this actually happens all the time. And it's because of, 3 very common mistakes that people make in their resume. Now, the first mistake is that you don't emphasize your technical skills. Remember, the main purpose of your resume is to land the interview, which means your resume needs to convince the hiring manager that you're qualified for the job. And when you're applying for a technical job, you need to create a technical resume with a much stronger emphasis on hard skills. Employers only spend a few seconds reviewing your resume. And as they're quickly skimming through your resume, they're specifically looking to see if you have the technical skills needed for the role. Your resume is basically a qualifier. It's think of it like a sieve. Your resume is the first line of defense the company looks at, like, is this worth our time? And the first thing they need to know is, does this person have the skills and experience needed to do the job? And if you don't emphasize these things in your resume, if you don't make them stand out, if you don't make it easy for the hiring manager to see these things, then your resume is going to get overlooked. And essentially your resume becomes scrap paper. But there's a really easy way to emphasize your skills in your resume. And the best way to do this is by locating your skills, your technical skills, front and center on your resume at the very top, at the very beginning. And I'll explain what this means. Right above the spot where you begin listing your work experience and all the bullet points that go with it, you want to put your top skills right above that, before that. But don't get too cute with this. Just keep it simple. I recommend just doing a bold heading that says top skills, then add a bulleted list of your top skills right below it. This makes it super easy for the hiring manager to quickly see what your top skills are. And by locating your top skills near the top of your resume, it actually kind of sets the tone for the hiring managers as they review your work experience. Think of it this way, you're actually kind of like pre-influencing the hiring manager before they read your work experience. Because if the hiring manager reads your work experience first without knowing what your top skills are, then it leaves them wondering what your skills are. They're like, I see that he has experience with AutoCAD, but what other skills does he have? They kind of have to like read in between the lines in your bullet points to figure out what your technical skills are. On the other hand, if the hiring manager sees your top skills within the first few seconds of looking at your resume, it actually changes how they perceive and interpret your work experience, because now they're already aware of your top skills. As they're reading the bullet points that you include in your work experience, they're keeping that in the back of your mind. If you included, Java, if you're a software engineer, if you included Java in your top skills at the top of your resume, now, if I'm the hiring manager and I'm reading this, I'm keeping that in the back of my mind as I'm reading the bullet points that you're saying about how you worked on this project or how you did that. I'm like, okay, yeah, he was probably using his skills in Java for this. See how this like pre-influence concept works. I'm going to continue. There's more points on this, but if you have any questions on this, let me know in the comments. I'll be sure to answer your questions. And if you find this helpful, please hit the like button or something, just so I know that I'm talking on the right points to, that are actually bringing value to you. So, sticking with this idea of locating your top skills at the top of your resume, another benefit of doing this is that it helps to make sure that your resume actually reaches the hiring manager. Many times the first line of defense that your resume goes through is HR. And HR managers don't fully understand, what goes into every job in the company. HR managers have a lot of responsibilities, and they're kind of like, when it comes to like knowing all the jobs in the company, they're more like jack of all trades versus an expert in any of them. They'll know enough to talk about each job, but they can't tell you exactly what goes into the job. And the reason I'm explaining this is, the HR manager is the first person to see your resume, and they're looking at it from more of a high level perspective. This is not the hiring manager, it's the HR manager. So, they won't be able to read in between the lines. They're going to be looking for key skills that were identified by the hiring manager when they created the job description. So if the HR manager doesn't see these top skills in your resume, then they're going to assume you're not qualified. They don't want to forward all 100 resumes that they get, to the hiring manager. They don't want to waste the hiring manager's time making them filter through it. So that's what the hiring manager or the HR manager's job is. But if you don't write your resume in a way that the HR manager can quickly see what your skills are, then you're probably not even going to have your resume reach the hiring manager. Does that make sense? I'm kind of talking a little fast here. I get excited. I had a couple cups of coffee. Let me know if that makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions on this. I have a few more tips on this concept of listing your top skills at the top of your resume. I have a few more tips on this before I move on to the next, common mistake. When you're listing these top skills, make sure you list them in order, and you should start with your strongest skill. For example, if you're a software developer and Python is your strongest skill, list Python first. This is important to do this because HR managers and hiring managers like me, we assume that you're listing your strongest skills first. And it's just kind of implied. And if you are applying for a technical position, the next tip for listing your top skills is to make sure that you're only listing technical skills in this area. And make sure you're honest about the skills too, because you're not doing yourself any favors if you embellish the truth or flat out lie. Okay, a few more tips on this. There's a lot of tips because this is super important and I want to make sure you're doing it right. You might have noticed that I didn't tell you where to list your soft skills yet on the resume. You're probably thinking, well, soft skills are important. I hear people talking about it all the time. And if you're watching this now, if you follow me on LinkedIn, you know that I'm always stressing the importance of soft skills. So you might find it odd that I'm telling you to not list soft skills in this top skills section. Okay, well, there's a time and a place for your strongest soft skills. You want to emphasize your soft skills on the resume, but not in your top skills. You want to put those in the bullet point statements from your work experience. For example, let's say leadership is one of your top skills, one of your top soft skills. Then be sure to include the word leadership, leader, or led, or lead. Include one of those words that represents leadership. Include it in your work experience bullet point statements. And to make that word stand out, show the soft skill word, let's say it's leadership, put that word in bold font so that it actually pops out at the hiring manager as they're reading through your bullet points. This is subliminal, kind of messaging here. This is like what marketing companies do. They make keywords and trigger words stand out by putting them in bold or underlined or all caps. You'll actually see this at restaurants too. They influence what you're going to order by, putting a box around one of the 5 items on the menu. That's the item they want you to buy, and it draws your eyes to it. So, these are actually like marketing tactics. And I'm sharing these with you because that's what you have to do to get a job today. It's not just being qualified for the job. You also have to self-market. You also have to sell yourself. You also have to, make the company interested in you. You can't just assume that they're going to know your technical skills and Okay, he's good. We don't need to ask any more questions. Whether you like to admit it or not, it's a popularity contest, and you got to, know the game of self-marketing. But with your resume, you know, put the technical skills front and center at the top of your resume, and then subliminally plant the seeds of your soft skills in the bullet points of your work experience, and make those words bold to stand out. Elizabeth Ferentz, makes sense. Thank you. Good to know someone's watching. I can't tell. I'm having trouble seeing the viewers right now, but I'm good. Did you have any questions on that? Let me know. So another quick point on this, when I talked about the top skills, listing them at the top of the resume, your top technical skills, you don't want to eat up too much paper space with this. You want this to be a quick read, where it takes literally like 2 seconds, top skills, and it only takes them a second to read it. And you also don't want to eat up, too much paper space by having a long vertical bulleted list. But an easy way to save space on your resume is to list the all your top technical skills horizontally this way, and then you can put like a pipeline or a break line or something like that in between each one. So you can say Java pipeline, C# pipeline, and so on. That's a good way to kind of just make it real quick, concise, neat. It actually looks pretty clean. I think I might be able to show you a display of that. No, I can't. I don't have it ready to go. But if you have questions on what that looks like, put a note in the comments or send me a DM. I'd be more than happy to show you what that looks like. In fact, I think we actually outlined it in the workbook too. We showed what this looked like. So you can see it there as well. Now, like I said, the reason you want to emphasize your hard skills front and center while burying your soft skills within the work experience is simple. Hiring managers will always invite you in for the interview if they know you have all the right technical skills required for the job. If they see right away that you have the right technical skills, they will automatically invite you in for an interview. Now, it doesn't mean that they won't invite you in for the interview if you don't have all those skills, but you'll automatically get invited in if you have all those skills. So that's why we want to broadcast that front and center. And you only have a few seconds to convey this to them. So, don't waste your precious resume real estate on emphasizing your soft skills at the beginning. Besides, that's what the interview is for. You're going to have plenty of time to demonstrate and talk about your soft skills during the actual interview. The resume is just to get you the interview. If you don't get the interview, you don't get the job. Now, this leads me to the second biggest mistake people make on their resumes. But before I switch over to it, I just want to remind you, if you have any questions on this, let me know. I know I can talk fast. The second biggest mistake people do on their resumes is they don't get into the project details. I've reviewed tons of resumes from candidates that listed amazing projects they've worked on, but there was one problem with all of these resumes. I had no clue how awesome these projects actually were until I asked them follow-up questions during their interview. Instead of going into detail about the projects you've worked on, most resumes only contain surface level descriptions of your accomplishments. And this is a problem because when you're a recruiter or an HR manager, when a recruiter or an HR manager is combing through a pile of resumes, they're not going to take the time to call you and ask what you meant. They're not going to ask you to clarify something or expand on it. They're not going to do that unless your resume impresses them enough to give you an interview. So when you're talking about a role or a project in your work experience, you want to make sure you hit on these major points. Okay, first, you want to explain what the role or project is. Second, you want to describe what you contributed to the role or project. Third, you want to explain what technical skills you used on the project. And last, you want to make sure that you clearly convey what the impact of your actions were on the project. How did you bring value to this? How did you contribute to the end goal? How did you contribute to the solution? You want to clearly convey that. And I'm going to give you some examples of how to do this later on in the live stream. When possible, you want to get into the specifics of what you worked on, at your last job. And you want to do this because it helps paint a clear picture of what you're capable of for the hiring manager. And this leads me to the third and final most common resume mistake, which is not speaking the hiring manager's language. And I mean like you not speaking the hiring manager's language, but I don't mean like speaking English versus Spanish or anything like that. I mean like speaking in a way that resonates with the hiring manager, speaking in a way that captures their interest, using the right terms and language that they want to hear. This is important because, like I told you earlier, you may be perfectly qualified for the job that you're applying for, but perception is reality. So none of that matters if your resume doesn't convince the hiring manager that you're qualified. And in order to convince them, you need to speak the same language as the hiring manager when you're creating your resume. And what I mean by this is you have to speak in terms of the hiring manager's interests. Think of your resume like a pop-up ad on a website. You only have a few seconds to pique their interest. Otherwise, they're going to click X to close the pop-up, and they're going to move on to something else. The same is true with your resume. Hiring managers are busy with a lot of resumes to review, so they don't have time to translate your resume. They don't have time to figure out what you're trying to say if you're not saying it clearly. And like I said before, the average hiring manager only spends 10 to 15 seconds max reviewing your resume. 10 to 15 seconds max. That's it. That's how long they take to review your resume. And then from there, they decide, do they put you in the worth considering pile or the scrap paper pile. And with such a narrow window of influence, you need to quickly capture the hiring manager's attention. So when you're creating your resume, keep the perspective of the hiring manager front of mind. And an easy way to do this is with a little exercise I like to call, so what? But this exercise isn't in the workbook. This is something I just added to the live stream today because I shared this exercise with some people over the last week and they've all found it really helpful. It's got great feedback. So this is kind of an on-the-fly change that I'm squeezing in here just because I wanted to cover some ground that while Stacia's gone. So I just want to say, this exercise is not in the workbook. So if you find this valuable, you're going to want to write this down as I'm explaining it. It's really simple though. Here's how it works. After you create the first draft of your resume, take a step back and review every statement in your resume, every sentence. Review each one by one. Literally read the first sentence and then pause. And what you're doing here is you're going to review your resume through the eyes of a hiring manager. Now, hiring managers like me are super skeptical. We're cynical. It's guilty until proven innocent. I'm looking at your resume, trying to convince myself that you're qualified, not the other way around. So to take on this mindset, as you're reviewing your resume, what you need to do is after you read each statement, pause and ask yourself, so what? Ask it in a cynical tone like that too. So what? Enthusiastic engineer who has deep understanding of structural analysis. If that's your first opening statement, read that and say, so what? Okay, so what? You're an enthusiastic engineer. This is how hiring managers read resumes. And it might sound funny or silly, but this is how they read it. They're busy. They're squeezing your resume in between 5 meetings that they're already late for. So they're little so what, gone. I mean, it's that quick. That's how quick they. If you're wondering why you're not hearing back from companies, consider take a look at the resumes you've submitted and do the so what exercise. Read each sentence and say, so what? Because that's exactly what the hiring manager is doing. So when you're doing this for your resume, if you don't have a clear answer to so what, you read that first sentence and you ask yourself, so what? If you don't have a clear answer to that, it means you need to revise the statement. And you need to revise the statement in a way that it matters to the hiring manager. Challenge yourself over and over again by asking, so what, until you've created a so what proof resume. Now, if you're watching this live right now, I want to know if you have any questions on how to use this so what technique. If you do, please let me know in the comments. The reason this exercise is so valuable is because it really helps you kind of like take on the mindset of the hiring manager, and it really helps you kind of understand, what they're looking for and whatnot. Look at it like you're a salesman and you have 10 seconds to keep this person on the phone, you know, and they're going to be reviewing your resume impatiently, because they probably have 5 of them to review. They always come in big waves, especially right now with unemployment, so high after all these big layoffs in big tech. You know, uh, their hiring managers and HR managers are receiving an overwhelming amount of resumes to review. So, they're going to be more impatient than ever. So, use this so what exercise to make sure that, you're making a resume that really speaks to the hiring manager and captures their attention. Now, for a quick recap, the 3 most common resume mistakes that you want to avoid are not emphasizing your technical skills, not getting into the project details, and not speaking the hiring manager's language. Avoiding these 3 huge mistakes on your resume greatly increases your chances of getting invited to interview. Now, another exercise I want to give you for speaking the hiring manager's language is called the bullet point formula. And this exercise is included in your workbook as well. It is included in your workbook. So this one, is included. And like I said, it's called the bullet point formula. And a simple way to and I'm sorry, I'm spitting out my words. I need to take a drink of water. Sorry about that, guys. So this exercise is called the bullet point formula, and it's included in the workbook. And it's another, simple exercise that can transform, an ordinary, roles and responsibilities type of bullet point in your resume. It can transform that into an eye-grabbing, accomplishment that captures the hiring manager's attention. And there's 2 ways to use this formula. And I actually left a blank space for you. Well, I left 2 blank spaces for you in the workbook to write both of these formulas down. The first form of this formula is start with an action verb, then a task, which is, your role or responsibility, and then explain how it resulted in a metric. So action verb, task, metric. Then the other way to use this formula is just kind of flipping the order. Action verb followed by metric followed by task. Now, I'm going to give you some examples of this. A typical resume will include some generic bullet points like this, responsible for creating erection drawings and design calculations, or performed quality control checks to reduce errors. These bullet points, if I'm a hiring manager, they don't tell me anything. Okay, you are a structural engineer and you know how to create erection drawings. Great. So does every structural engineer. Oh, you know how to do design calculations. Well, I hope so. You did quality control checks to reduce errors. This is pretty much standard for any type of engineer, mechanical, software, structural. So, I'm not trying to tease, if your resume sounds like this, I'm not trying to pick on you, but, bullet points like this do not tell the hiring manager anything. You're basically just kind of saying, yeah, I'm just like every other person. I do the same things as other structural engineers. Like I said, if you're a structural engineer, I'm going to assume that you already know these things. So these bullet points don't tell me anything about your unique experiences, accomplishments, and anything like that. But you can transform these boring bullet points by applying the bullet point formula. And here's a few examples. Instead of saying responsible for creating erection drawings and design calculations, you could apply the bullet point formula and say, completed all erection drawings and design calculations under budget and ahead of schedule, saving the company $20,000 in revenue in the year 2022. The value of that, you see the difference. In the first example, you're just saying like a role or responsibility of your job, created erection drawings and design calculations. But in the second, when you use the bullet point formula, I completed all erection drawings and design calculations, So you're still saying that, you're still communicating what you did. That's the task. That's the task in the bullet point formula. Then after that, you're saying how you completed them. I completed all these things under budget and ahead of schedule. Okay. And what did it accomplish? Well, you saved the company $20,000 in 2022. Okay. And like, how did I come up with that number, $20,000? Well, of course, this is just a generic example, but like when I was a structural engineer, if I was trying to put a bullet point like this on my resume, I would keep tabs on my general tabs. I didn't track this meticulously, but like whenever I worked on a project where I, found a way to save a bunch of money and material or reduce the weight, or if I found ways to speed up, the deliverable timeline or things like that, or I tried to quantify that in a dollar amount for myself, and I'd keep like a little list, okay, well, I saved $5,000 in steel on this project. Okay, I write that down. I compressed the timeline of this project by 50%, by coming up with this strategy. We weren't supposed to deliver until February, but instead we delivered in December. These are the types of things that hiring managers care about. They don't care about what you did. They care about what value it brought. What did it accomplish? How did it solve the company's problems? How did it bring revenue in? How did it save money? These are the things that hiring managers care about. I'm going to give you another example of this bullet point formula. Instead of saying performed quality control checks to reduce errors, you could apply the bullet point formula and say established quality control procedures that resulted in eliminating 75% of design errors. You see the difference between these two examples. In the first one, again, you're just saying what you did, but you're not saying what it accomplished. You're not saying how it benefited the company or how it benefited the customer, or how it improved safety or anything like that. You're not saying what it accomplished. You're just saying what you did. But when you use the bullet point formula, you're still saying what you did. I established QC quality control procedures, but then you're also saying what it resulted in. It resulted in eliminating 75% of design errors. And to make that even more powerful, you could attribute that to a cost. Eliminating 75% of design errors, which resulted in saving $10,000 year over year. You might have to get a little bit creative and make some assumptions with ways to quantify things like dollar amounts, unless you're in a role where you have access to that type of information. But use your best judgment. You should have a general idea of like what you're working on and how it's impacting the company's bottom line. The important factors are time, quality, and safety. Those are what you want to speak to in your metrics. How did you impact time, quality, or safety for the company, or for the project, or for the customer? Now, if you're watching me live right now, I want to know if you can see the difference between a typical resume bullet point versus a resume that uses the bullet point formula. Let me know in the comments, and let me know if you have any questions on it too. These two exercises, so what, and the bullet point formula, these are super powerful techniques for making your resume, basically guaranteeing your ability to get an interview, as long as you're applying for a job that's, relevant to your skills and experience. Then you're guaranteed. I guarantee you as an engineering manager, I can guarantee you will always get the interview if you follow the bullet point formula and if you do the so what exercise. Now, I'm not seeing any questions in the comments, which means everything's crystal clear, or my comments isn't working for some reason. But anyway, if you're clear on this, here's the next thing I want you to do. In the workbook, below the bullet point formula section, we included a few blank lines. I want you to use these blank lines below the bullet point formula in the workbook, that is. I want you to use these blank lines to apply the bullet point formula to each of the items you listed under my accomplishments from the day one exercises in the workbook. I don't know if you remember, if you weren't here on Monday, what we did is we walked you through some exercises to identify, what your accomplishments were and what were the things that were noteworthy from your last job. We gave you some question prompts to kind of draw that information out. And we did that on Monday so that you could apply it here in this exercise to begin building your, your bullet point formula for your resume. So you're going to want to go back to that exercise from day one, look at what your accomplishments were, then use the blank lines below in today's exercise to transform each of those accomplishments into a bullet point formula statement for your resume. Does that make sense? I'll give you a chance to ask any questions about this. If you have any questions on the bullet point formula or how to use it, or if you have any questions on anything I covered today, please let me know in the comments. The whole point of this live stream is so that, you can ask questions in real time, and I'll respond to you right now on the video. So I'll talk about anything you have questions about. These two exercises are so valuable because, a lot of people struggle with, right now I'm seeing it all over LinkedIn posts every day, hey, I submitted my resume and I got ghosted. I'm not hearing back. I'm not hearing back from anybody. I've submitted my application to 20 companies and, I'm not hearing back. And, doing these things, if you're not doing these things that I just talked about, that's probably why this is happening. You got to first write your resume in a way that the HR manager is going to understand it. Then you got to write your resume in a way that the hiring manager is going to see the value you're bringing to the table. And while I'm giving you a chance to ask questions in the comments, I want to explain another concept with, why people are maybe feeling like their resumes are getting ghosted after they apply for a job and not hear anything back. A lot of companies, especially bigger companies, they use what's called an ATS system. I think it stands for applicant tracking software or applicant tracking system. But basically what it is, if you're not familiar, is it's an automated software program. I mean, there's tons of different versions of this, but it's an automated software program that, collects resumes. When you submit it to a company, it doesn't go at a big company, it doesn't go to a person first. It actually goes into the company's ATS system. And what it does is it's the first line of defense before it even goes to the HR manager. It's the first line of defense before the HR manager. And if your resume isn't submitted in a way that includes the keywords that the ATS system is looking for argument's sake, it might be looking for the word Java. That might be like a deal breaker. Don't say the word Java on here, declined. Or if you submit your resume in the wrong format, maybe you get cute with it and you create some pretty Canva document to make a nice, pretty resume. A lot of these formats are not compatible with the company's ATS system. So, it leads to your resume not really getting seen and it just goes nowhere. I call this the resume black hole. And this is actually what happened in the story that I shared with you at the beginning of this live stream. I told you about, I had that connection who applied for a job. He told me he did at our company, he applied for a job and we never saw his resume come through. It turned out he submitted his resume in a format that wasn't compatible. So the resume got flagged and rejected and nobody at our company was even aware of this. The only reason we caught it was because he was a connection of mine. So I reached out to him to ask, hey, did you apply? And he said he did. So, that drew the red flag. But, it's important to understand this because your resume can be perfect in every way. But if you have a typo on a keyword, or if you submit it in the wrong format, or if you used a different word instead of the right keyword, it's going to prevent you from even having your resume seen. It's going to prevent you from getting an interview. And actually, we're going to talk a little bit more about keywords and how to find the right keywords for jobs that you're applying for. We're going to talk about that more this week because it's really important. Again, it's not about what you're capable of doing. It's about convincing the hiring manager of what you're capable of doing. And you need to speak their language. They're looking for specific words. They're looking for specific actions, specific accomplishments. And you can figure out what all these things are. There's actually really easy ways to do this. But I'm going to save that for tomorrow and Friday's live streams, just because it looks like we're getting a little long right now. So before you go, it doesn't look like there's any questions. Before you go, I've got one more quick resume tip for you. Make sure you include a link to your LinkedIn profile on your resume, because it increases your chances of hearing back from the hiring managers by 71%. This is a real statistic. 71% increase in your chances of hearing back just by including a link to your LinkedIn profile. So there's a reason for this. There's a science behind this. This isn't, just one of those eat chocolate and lose weight, clickbait buttons. There's a science behind this, and I can explain why this is the case. But the main thing I want you to know is include a link to your LinkedIn profile in your resume, because it makes a difference. And tomorrow in the live stream, we're going to show you how to optimize your LinkedIn profile to attract recruiters and hiring managers and opportunities. Because if you're putting that link to your profile in your resume, we want to make sure there's some specific things on your profile that is hitting on the right points for the people that are looking at your resume. Think of it this way, like if they look at your profile, it's almost like a pre-introduction. It's the hiring manager's chance to kind of see who you are, put a face to the name. When they look at your profile picture, they look at your about summary, and you want to hit on the right points there. And we're going to talk about how to do that tomorrow. And we're also, going to show you how to accelerate your job search towards finding the perfect job tomorrow as well. So you don't want to miss out on these insights. So make sure you join us when we go live tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. But if you have any questions on the topics we covered today, let us know in the comments. I'm going to stick around for a bit to make sure we get everyone's questions answered. But if you're taking off, thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow. And you know what? With the way my luck has been going this week, with the internet being out and all, I bet the second I stop this live stream, Stacia's going to join in. I haven't heard from her yet, although I haven't been checking my phone during this live stream. But oh, okay, she's watching me wrap up. So I guess we'll stick with the wrap up. But if you join us tomorrow, if you have any questions, Stacia is a resume expert, and feel free to bring questions to the table tomorrow regarding resumes too, because Stacia has a lot of great insights to share, and she has a whole different perspective on some things relative to my experience and how I look at resumes. So, if you join us tomorrow, feel free to ask Stacia, ask both of us, but ask Stacia about questions or her opinion on some of these things tomorrow. But like I said, if you're taking off, thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.